welcome to Digital Shift, also known as Corporate Evolution Tales. Join us as we dive into the dynamic world of digital transformation. From illuminating case studies to captivating narratives, we uncover the stories behind companies' journeys toward digital excellence. Whether you are a seasoned corporate leader or an aspiring innovator, our podcast explores the shifts, challenges of modern business evolution. Hello everyone, this is another episode of Digital Shift, aka Corporate Evolution Tales, and today my guest is Korena. Thank you so much, Korena, for being today with me and being available for sharing your experience.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Okay, would you like to present yourself before we will dive to the digital transformation?
Yeah, so Korena Keys, and I am the owner and founder of a digital marketing firm based in the heartland of the United States, but we work with clients across the Midwest and honestly coast to coast and some international. And we really like to help our clients kind of stay ahead of what's happening in the digital marketing and digital advertising space, kind of push envelopes, keep kind of trends, but also make sure that we're giving, the mom and pops and the smaller and mid-sized companies the same advantage that enterprise companies have when it comes to digital technology and digital marketing.
Amazing. Well, I'm sure you will have a lot to share. So if we will start from the question, what are your thoughts on digital transformation? What will be your answer?
I think that is just going to become a very commonplace term that we're going to hear over and over and over because technology and things are evolving so rapidly, capabilities are changing. It's just going to be a status quo. We all have to get comfortable with change and evolution and moving forward. And if we're not, we're going to become non-existent pretty quickly.
Yes, agree. And what do you think about having the digitalization in your sphere? How it is changing on daily basis, even I will not be afraid to say.
I look back, I started my career as a media strategist back in the days where it was before Google and the internet and all those capabilities came above. And our media plans were like 4 lines on an Excel spreadsheet with television, radio, billboard, and maybe some cable television if we were really advanced at that time. Not to date myself, I've been doing this a long time. And the way that it is now, it's literally evolving every single day. There's something that we're learning every day, all the time. And we have a whole team trying to keep up with it and making sure we're staying ahead of the curve and we're monitoring trends and we're thinking ahead. I can't imagine trying to do this as a solopreneur or a marketing team of one. Like it would just be impossible to maintain all of the changes that are happening.
Yes, definitely agree. And when we are speaking about the team or the people that are surrounding you, what do you think is more important? Is it about the experience of people that you have around you, or it is about the amount of people? So it's more the better. How is it for you?
Actually, I want people around me who are naturally curious, that are going to ask questions and not accept status quo or just get comfortable in the space that they're in. I would rather have a smaller team with really, really engaged, curious, and depth of expertise than have a whole lot of people that are doing a little bit of everything.
Yes, agree. Yeah, I mean, I think that the experience is so important, specifically when those people are supporting you for digital transformation and generally in the process of digitalizing stuff and the parts of the flow. So, and what are your thoughts on the technologies that we use? Do you have any technology that is coming to your mind that is supporting on the digitalization?
That's a tough one because we're constantly looking and testing new technology, new platforms, new integrations. And really, I think for us over the past probably I would say year and a half, which is a long time in this space, but not really a long time. We really want to make sure we're maximizing the few tools. Like I would rather have a fewer number of tools and use all of their capabilities to the fullest extent than have a lot of different tools that we're using that are just, we're going to use this piece here and this piece here and kind of merge it all together. And I think for really effective digital transformation, we have to really understand the platforms that we currently have access to and making sure that we're using it to the fullest capability and adapting maybe to that platform a little bit more than
Mm-hmm.
expecting the technology to adapt to our individual needs.
Yeah.
And so changing some of our internal processes to be more efficient and to maximize the capabilities that are there versus trying to find another solution that fits within kind of our expectation of how we do the work has been a game changer for us over the past 18 months. Because it's,
Right.
I don't know if you've experienced it, but the cost of subscriptions and the cost of software is just
Oh, yeah.
exponentially increased. And there's going to become a point where we just can no longer afford the solutions that are out there.
Agree.
So we have to find the ones that have the biggest impact and are going to have the biggest effect on what we're doing and maximize that potential.
Yeah, I think you are right there. And even I will not say on daily basis, but it's changing quite frequently, the subscription amount. And I think big companies specifically, sometimes they're even losing the track of like, okay, this is for this part, this is for this subscription.
Yeah.
And we are just adding the tools without even understanding, do we need it? Maybe we already have a tool that has that feature. So it's definitely about the controlling of that part, like having anyone that will control it or like administer that will help there for sure.
So a
Awesome.
lesson learned on that, a friend of
Yes.
mine, also a business owner, had their credit card compromised about a year ago. And
Okay.
so they had to redo their credit card. And they just basically told the credit card company, like, don't just automatically extend any charge that comes through any renewal. They found through this process almost $4,000 a month in savings for
Wow.
subscriptions and software they were paying for that they didn't remember that they had signed up for and
Yeah.
were no longer using.
Yes, I mean, with digitalization, I think that's one of the processes that definitely should be looked through, like to understand, okay, these are the subscriptions that we have, and generally the cost, because I think a lot of people, and I'm not sure if you will agree with me on this, but a lot of people are afraid of digitalizing because of the cost that is coming with it, like the affordability of being able to do the digitalization. But I think it's one time price that you are giving for later having savings, as you mentioned, like $4,000. It's not like a small number, right? For a business, like for startups or even for a company that is just
Yeah.
giving it for nothing. So what are your thoughts there? What kind of things we should be afraid of when we are speaking about digital transformation? Or should we
So
be
one of the
generally
things,
afraid?
yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I really watch for and I'm very hesitant on is to sign any like term or prepay for any long-term subscriptions. So the days of signing an annual contract and prepaying for a whole year of service to me is like that's a big red flag. If a company wants that, then we need to like reevaluate what they're offering. Just because the technology, it's emerging, it's evolving, it's changing so rapidly, and there's so many
Right.
startups that are coming out as a
Mhm.
result of it, which I think is great, but it's also not a proven platform. So we want to make sure that before we sign a long-term commitment, we want to know that it's going to do exactly what we want it to do. It's going to perform the way that we want it to perform. They've had time to work out kind of all of their kinks and their bugs, and it's working
Right.
smoothly. And so just really paying for things on an as needed basis. So not doing long-term contracts, month to month trials, and testing things out really thoroughly before making any sort of long-term or substantial commitments.
Agree. And what other challenges you came across when we are speaking about digital transformation from your experience? Any specific challenges that are coming to your mind?
Yeah, I think it's for us, it's really figuring out what we need to transform and where do we lean into the technology and the capabilities, and especially with the AI evolutions, like where do we lean into it and where do we kind of hold back?
Yeah.
We could spend a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of resources trying to find a solution for something that's not really a problem, or ignoring a problem where we should find a solution, because that's just
Right.
as bad. So I think it's really about having some clearly defined understanding of what your workflow is, what your processes are, what you're trying to accomplish, what the desired outcomes are. Figuring out where can we find solutions, where can we start to test different tools, technology, platforms that will enable us to be more efficient in that space, but the efficiency is greater than the cost. So we need to have a net positive return.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think starting with clearly defined understanding all of our processes, all of our workflows, all of our team frustrations, where do we have some of the redundancies, where can we find some efficiencies? And that's one thing we started a couple of years ago as a team. We really sat down and had one person follow every single team member for several days and document, what are you doing? How are you doing it? Where are you doing it? And then we did surveys. What's your biggest frustration in your work? What are things that you feel are a waste of time? What are things that you feel like you're doing multiple times? Where are areas you think you can find efficiencies in your job? And we took and we mapped all of it out, we documented it, and then created kind of a ranking of priorities. And for us, it was really in our billing and financial department is where the number one pain point was, where the most opportunities were. And through this process, over gathering the data, clearly identifying what we need to do, we were actually able to take a team that had 2 people full-time dedicated to doing these tasks and this work, and apply different efficiencies, apply different solutions, really that whole digital transformation process that we go through. And today we have one person on staff that is kind of an entry-level 15-hour week that does data entry and checks the mail and does the things in the office that need to be done. And we have an accountant to oversee and make sure bills get paid on, again, they work for us about 10 hours a week. So we took this from an 80-hour a week position to essentially a 25-hour per week position. And in the process have cut almost $150,000 in payroll costs.
Amazing.
And that's what digital transformation can do when we really know what the problem is and why we're doing it and what the intended outcome is. It's a process that took us about 12 months to go through between the research and the planning and the testing and the implementation. But I never look back and wish we would have done it differently.
That's amazing. A lot of people are actually mentioning that there are some points or like the parts of the process from where we can start. And a lot of companies just need to understand the goal of what they want from digital transformation. And as you mentioned on your side, is more about the balance of the budgeting, which was basically one of your pain points, right? And what do you think about the AI? Is it coming handy when we are speaking about improving the processes or on the way of digitalizing? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think AI is going to be a game changer. It already has been, and it's not going away. In a responsible AI is up to us. Like we need to make sure that we're doing it responsibly, that we know what vendors we're working through. We were pretty early on developed an AI policy within our organization about how and when it could be used and applied and where people could use it without trying to stifle the creativity and stifle the capabilities of testing and exploring and expanding. And for us, it has been, I mean, it's probably ingrained through almost every one of our team members use it on a daily basis in some aspect of their job currently. So it's really about us equipping our people to become masters in managing and applying the AI technology and tools that are available to us versus having it necessarily everything that we're currently doing.
Agree. And a lot of people are afraid of, I think generally when we are speaking both about AI and about digital transformation, a lot of people's fear comes from unknown things that are coming with it. So they are not imagining how it can be done or how the AI can be used. So what do you think, how people can be taught better on this stuff, like about the digital transformation and about the AI and about all the techniques that there are for it?
Yeah. I think you really need to just jump into where in your industry are people currently applying it and applying it well. Are there examples that you can follow? Are there people that you can talk to? Are there peer groups or networking groups that you can get involved in? I know in the marketing industry that we're in, Marketing Institute is an amazing resource that has a lot of case studies and examples and use cases and things like that that we can lean into and learn from so that we're not doing it all on our own. We can kind of expedite our process based on what others have tried and based on what others have learned in the process, where it didn't work, where it did work, how we can do it better. And then I'm also part of a peer group, and we talk about it pretty regularly as to what are you testing, what are you trying, how is it working, where are you learning, and things along those lines. So I think it's a matter of really have to be comfortable with change first. I mean, that's the biggest thing. We have to be comfortable with change, because it's just going to change rapidly. And I think one person said it best, where companies in the future will either be AI intuitive, where they were created on an AI platform. They will be integrated AI, which they will adopt AI to get business practice, or they're going to be out of business. And I think we all have to start to be comfortable with how we're using it, what those capabilities are, and just start testing. Again, it's going back to find one use case. Find one area in your company that you could test AI and see if it creates a difference, and measure that and apply it. And that will build comfort levels in the C-suite, but also then across the teams that are using it, because they're like, this really did work. It did improve our process. It did improve our profitability. It did improve our case flow. It did reduce frustration. Whatever that win is, take the win and build on it, and then go into the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Agree. And when we are speaking about people that are participating in digital transformation, I think we can say that we should be also transparent with them. As you mentioned, like in your company, when you are doing changes, was it about the transparency that helped to make people more comfortable, or was it some other things that you did so people were like, okay, yeah, this is good thing that we are doing?
Well, change is always hard. As human beings, we're naturally opposed to any sort of change in our environment and in our system. So we had a lot of conversation. And for us, it was starting with understanding what their pain points were and taking the approach that we're trying to fix these. We're trying to make this a better environment for you and make it a better workplace for you. So work with us as we make these transformations. It's going to be rocky. We're going to find bumps, but we're going to talk about them and we're going to work through them. And so there was a lot of transparency and a lot of communication within our organization as we were going through this process. And that helps them to understand why we're doing it. They had some buy-in because they actually told us what their pain points were. And that's where we started with the biggest one. So there was some buy-in that got in that we also had as we were going through it. And then there's also that collaboration where we were sharing, what is the outcome? How is this working? And honestly, it did take a year, like I said, for this first one that we did, that whole overhaul and transformation of our financial internal operating process and tools. And it was a little bit painful, but it honestly got to the point where they just didn't even ask any more questions. It just became so easy and seamless and smooth for them that we had to remind them that we even did it. And I'm like, do you remember what it was like before?
Yeah.
Because to them, it just became such second nature that they didn't even think back to what it used to be anymore.
And when we are speaking about processes, is there anything, like any way that you identified the processes that needed to be improved besides the budget thing that you knew about? How else you identified the gaps that needed to be improved?
One, I have a really, really good COO who loves processes. That is not my strength. It is not where I live. I just have one person in my company that is just really, really good at identifying and developing and planning out processes. And that definitely makes my life easier. But we also do company gatherings and retreats a couple of times a year where we bring everybody together. And there's one portion that's dedicated on training on existing processes. But we also go through a process, if you will, with them where we identify any gaps that have happened, anything that's maybe missing. And then as we're training in new people, we also have this where it's like, I should be able to just give you this task and you should be able to follow the process to execute it. And if you cannot do that, then we need to fix the process. We need to add a process. We need to build a process or something. So let's talk about that as you're training. And if you're onboarding, you're not able to say, okay, I need to do this thing, and here's all the information that I need to be able to do it and execute it fairly well without a lot of oversight, then we need to improve that process. And so we have a lot of communication. In fact, one of our core goals and objectives for the business this year is to make sure we have documented processes for all
Mm-hmm.
of the core activities, and that they're easy to find within one click. So
Yeah.
our employees aren't searching like a whole server of files to find this one process. But if it's not embedded in
Mm-hmm.
the task that they're assigned, then that's a problem.
Agree. A lot of people are mentioning this actually, that the documentation is so important generally for digitalization, and not only at the beginning when we are starting, but also at the end. And you at the beginning mentioned in your speech about the lessons learned, which is also so important when we are digitalizing stuff. That even when we are done and when we know that everything worked out, it's important to document everything,
Yeah.
right? So
Yes.
do you think that we need this kind of library in our companies when the change is already done?
Yeah. And another key component, I'll get back to the library question, but another key component
Yes.
is always do a debrief. After
Mm-hmm.
every project, after every campaign, schedule a 30-minute debrief to sit down and everybody that touched the project, what went
Mm-hmm.
really well, what didn't go as expected, and what can we do better? And then I also ask,
Mm-hmm.
is there anything that we shouldn't have done that we did do?
Yeah.
Because that also tells us, it reaffirms, did we get out of it what we wanted to get out of it? And everybody on the team fully understands what the outcome was. But also it identifies some of those process gaps, like, well, we didn't know
Mm-hmm.
how to do this, so we kind of fumbled here, or there was missing communication here. So it identifies some of those things as well. And so we are pretty consistent about doing debriefs and documenting that information, whether it's a client campaign or a process for testing a new platform or trying to implement some changes. It's really critical to just have that kind of round robin at the end. And then, yeah, I think the library, I've tried for years to implement a process library of some sort, and we still don't have one. So as much as I think it's really good, what we have learned is that as long as the process is linked into our task templates,
Mm-hmm.
so anytime we start a task template, the process for that task is already linked into that task. So there's the description. Here's a link to the
Yeah.
process. The library then has kind of become a little bit, I don't want to say irrelevant because that's a little bit strong of a term, but it's become less important because
Yeah.
that process is reviewed. It's linked to the task. Again, they can open the task, see what needs to be done. And oh, by the way, here's that process that if I haven't done this in a long time or I'm new to the task, I can refer to. And then they are also empowered as they're going through the task. If software has changed or some sort of the process has changed, they can submit a ticket to change the process document. And so then the manager will just update that process document, but then it's automatically updated because the link just goes to the document
Yeah.
versus having it in multiple places.
I see. Well, I agree there, and I think that that's helping as well. As so far that as we have the clarity on stuff that should be done, I think it's like if you have anywhere written or like explained how the stuff should be done properly, that's all that matters at that moment.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I think the other
Amazing.
thing, oh, sorry.
No, no, go ahead, go ahead.
I think the other thing that we've learned when it comes to those processes is they can't be too detailed. It literally is, this is the point of the process. This is the desired outcome of the process. These are the critical steps that we don't want you to overlook, but you still do apply a little logic and think
Yeah.
about what you're doing as you go through it. And that's the
Right.
hard part to document.
Yeah, it's already when people should think on their side, like how to do that properly. And I had a guest a few weeks ago who said that it's all about simplicity as well. So sometimes we are overthinking the processes and the implementation of stuff, but it's also about the simplicity that should be still there. We don't need to overthink. We don't need to have complex processes there. Do you think, will you agree with that, that it's still about simplicity, even when we are speaking about hard things like digital transformation?
Yes, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be easy to understand, easy to follow, easy to digest and communicate.
Yes.
Adding screenshots or Loom videos or something within that process is super helpful.
Mm-hmm. Agree. Amazing. Awesome. I think this will be my last question, and it's about the advice of what kind of advice would you offer to companies or like the people that are listening to us that want to do their digital transformation?
take baby steps. We're
Mm-hmm.
all kind of early in this journey of digital transformation. None of us are at the end of the journey. Like most of the companies out there will not tell you that they're completed with their transformation, because I don't think
Right.
that day will ever come. But I think just taking those baby steps and stepping into it gradually, start at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. You're not too late to get into it yet. There's still a lot of companies that are further behind than you are. There's companies that are further ahead than you are, but just start and take those first couple of steps into it.
Amazing. Right. It's so important to start with small things, still having a goal, but be able to do small changes, which will then have an impact on the big change that is there. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Corinne, for being today's guest. And any last words before we'll wrap up this episode?
No, thank you so much for having me. I think the only other piece of advice I'd give, as it pops into my head as you were speaking,
Sure.
have a champion. Assign somebody in the organization to own the transformation process and make sure that they're project managing it from start to finish. Because if it's just added on to somebody else's job, or there's a committee that's
Yes.
managing it, it's probably not going to be successful.
For sure. This is so important point actually, just not as an addition, but specifically a topic to be discussed. Because again, having the ownership and a person that understands that this is the thing that he or she needs to do is so important, rather than just giving pieces to different people and then thinking, okay, we failed somewhere where it is. So yeah,
Yeah.
very, very good point for the end. Well, awesome. Thank you so much again for being the guest and sharing with us your
Thanks for having me.
experience.